Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from DeltaCX.com. We're a full service CX and UX consultancy. We do projects, training, and consulting. Have a look if you've got nothing else to do. And welcome to a rescheduled office hours Ask Us Anything, normally held tomorrow, but I'm speaking at an event tomorrow, so thanks to Dr. Nick for being available today and moving it back one day. That means that we will be taking your questions live for at least an hour, or as long as Nick can stand us. And so if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask them in the chat, or you can also follow the link up here, deltacx.com/links, and there's a link you can follow there for asking a question anonymously, which I know some of you want to do because you want to dish on your jobs. So before we bring Nick in, just the usual thanks to everybody who is financially supporting the channel through YouTube memberships, which is totally optional and always appreciated. People are giving between $3 and $10 a month. Last year, I made $700. So who knows what I'll make this year. But thanks to everybody who's helping pay for my streaming software and some delicious chocolate chips. All right. So on that note, and of course, don't forget to subscribe. Let's bring Nick in and learn more about who the heck he is. Nick, who are you?
Hello. You guys all know me by now. I'm Dr. Nick, the loud one on LinkedIn, or I'm pretty quiet these days for good reasons. I'm a 12-year UX pro, 20-year digital guy, user researcher currently, but full service, full stack UX, user research and design. Old school. That's me. Hi.
Cool. And it looks like even though I logged in twice, my chat system is not showing the messages on my computer. They're just coming up here. So that's bad. Let me try to re-log in there. Otherwise, it's going to be funky to try to get to that. All right. So we did get 2 questions ahead of time, so we can certainly start on those while I try to get my system fixed and improved. Where do I go to chat? Oh, if only companies had UX people working there, I'd be able to easily find the chat. Events, video storage, team, analytics, help, settings, billing. None of those said chat. So fun. Okay, so I have no way to get at these questions. And hi, Mariwa. I see your question. I'm going to have to figure out some way to get to it because I literally cannot use my own system. They moved the button that says chat, and now I don't know where to find the chat. Where could it be? No. This is bad. That's really bad. I'm so sorry. Let's see. Could it be this? Sorry, we're experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by. Meanwhile, I will just log into my own show on LinkedIn and grab Mariwa's question. And you'll be third on our list.
Do you want me to read it out and start answering it whilst you're fixing the...
Not totally, because I have to copy and paste them into my document so that they can end up in the YouTube description. So let me put up the first question we got, and we can start answering that. The first question we got actually looks like this. Let me make it a little bit bigger. When recruiting participants for research, do you have a rule of thumb for how many to recruit beyond the number of interviews you need in total, as a buffer of some sort to account for folks who don't schedule or cancel? Also, do you find it more difficult to find participants during certain times of year, like summer or winter holidays? Nick, can you start on that one while I clean up my chat woes?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Hello, asker of question. Good question. We get this quite regularly around sample size, but this is obviously a little bit more than that. Look, the rule for recruitment initially is you go until you're confident that you're not learning anything new, or that you've actually got it, you've landed it, you understand the insight that's there. You've also kind of assumed, you said how many people to recruit beyond the number of interviews, and that always sends a kind of a red flag up for me, because I'm assuming you're referring to a very specific piece of research you've got planned, and that interviews are the most appropriate methodology. But just I don't know, just recruitment and interviews, and it kind of, I don't know. Interviews are never a great way to learn things, frankly. I mean, it's a necessary evil, but there are some other better methods to use. So how do you recruit beyond in Eden Total, i.e. to handle dropouts and no shows and tube strikes and all that kind of shenanigan? You will almost always get some form of dropout. If you're doing things physically, I would imagine it's a lot more so than remote. When I was doing lab work pre-pandemic, you'd always get dropouts because of travel shenanigans and what have you. Some people travel from quite long distances, and things happen. People have lives. I usually, if we're doing a day of 6 to 8 people, I'd have 1 or 2 people as spares, kind of thing, i.e. over recruit by 1 or 2 participants. Online is less of a less dropout, but I must say, all the research that I've done, pandemic and post-pandemic, i.e. exclusively remote research, there have also been no shows, quite high numbers, if I'm honest. So people's lives are still getting in their way, or their diaries are getting in their way, you know, the usual reasons for not being able to attend. Possibly, maybe, I'm just thinking out loud right now, maybe absences and no-shows are a little higher because people are working and they've got stuff going down and they volunteered stuff. It's easier to cancel when it's remote, so people do, because there's less commitment if there is a physical attendance. What else? Right, sorry. What have we got here? Also,
Do you
do you
have a
find it more
rule of
difficult to
thumb
find
for how many you recruit?
a rule of thumb? No, I'd say, you know, like kind of 5 to 10% kind of thing. So, you know, an extra 1 in 10 or 2 in 10 kind of thing, 10 to 20% maybe. I don't explicitly do that. I kind of just do it by as standard. You just make sure you've got some extra people in there so that you get your numbers. But don't forget, or at least I like the way that I do things. I like to do things are in like these cascading samples of 5, repeating 5s or 8s or whatever that number is. But the point is that it's giving you an opportunity to learn and pivot and shift and evolve your research plan, thinking, you know, not on the fly, but as you're learning, rather than saying I need to get 60 people and then get it all in one hit, which is a whole different approach and can be a lot scarier. And then you've absolutely got to hit your numbers because you've got no more chance. It's a one-hit deal. This is why doing it more frequently in a more agile kind of a way is a much more less stressful, preferable way of doing things. Ms. Levitt, how are you doing on the technical front?
I think I'm okay. I thank you for that. That was the stretch for time.
Sorry, I was playing the crowd.
Yeah, thank you. Well done. Yeah, so to answer quickly and add to what Nick said, we do have a rule of thumb over at Delta CX. We don't necessarily impose it on other people. So I do agree with Nick. We usually do try to schedule 10 to 20% more people. So if we're hoping to meet 30, maybe we schedule 34, 35, on the assumption that some will cancel. Now, you have to be ready for what happens if everyone shows up, which is rare, but either you're canceling people and paying them anyway, or you're doing the extra interviews and paying them anyway, because it's usually good etiquette to pay them anyway. You wouldn't cancel them and be like, ha 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 ha, no money for you. Thanks for blocking out your calendar. So remember, if you do schedule more people, you should be giving them the incentive, even though they didn't participate. So usually I'll interview them anyway. As for the invitations, we have found on some of our projects that we got really low response rates from inviting people. So we actually started inviting 4x. You know, like if we wanted to meet 30 people, we started inviting 100. You know, and obviously when our calendar fills up, but you can do it that way, or we can certainly sometimes we build up to that, like, okay, let's invite 40, see how many of them respond. Okay, let's invite, that didn't go well. Let's invite another 20, let's see how they respond. Especially if you really want to make sure you're getting certain demographics of people or behaviors or segments or personas, then that would be the way to go. Kath is asking, do you guys not use stats to deduce effective sample size? So typically in qualitative UX research, the rule of thumb is 8 to 12 people per group, audience, segment, persona. If it's if it's generative, and if it's evaluative, 5 per persona. So ultimately, we might want to meet 30 to 32 people because we have 4 groups or segments or personas, and we're shooting for that 8 to 12 each. So yes, we do have those rules of thumb that help guide us. These rules of thumb are often misunderstood. People saw the 5 people for testing and they just thought it was 5 people, period. They didn't understand it was 5 people per segment or persona, and they don't understand that generative is usually 8 to 12. So there you go. So yeah, we shoot for 8 to 12s usually. Nick, anything to add before I move on to the next question?
Yeah, I just wanted to answer Kath. Not in this commercial world, no. In academia, 100% yes. That's a different form of research compared to commercial user research. There are all kinds of statistical tests and other things you can do to test for power according to sample and then confidence. That's advanced statistics. It's way beyond the UX market, and it will be for probably a decade at least, or forever. That's academia for you. That's what PhD type research is all about.
Groovy. All right, let's get to question 2. And I see a question coming in anonymously, so I'll add that to the list. Thank you for asking. This came from friend of the show, Chihuat, and it says NFTs, Metaverse, crypto. After reading and watching videos about these, I still really don't get it. And recruiters inviting me to apply for jobs in such companies are making me feel like I might be obsolete soon. Do you think I'm just being paranoid, or will I wake up one day and realize the ship has sailed?
That's such an awesome question. So whoever asked that, I'm giving
She
you big
what?
star. I love it. That's a great question. We haven't been asked that ever, but it's so on the money, and it's such a great question. So I would want to thank you for the opportunity to answer that, because okay, NFTs is literally finding your mug, your moron, right? It's a seller's market, not a buyer's market. Metaverse is effectively what VR, internet VR, kind of, like, you know what I mean, like mixed mode internet. And crypto is absolutely falling out the window right now. My £60 portfolio is now worth £30. So if I actually had any real money, I'd be 50% sad. The point is it's all unregulated shit, and that's all. The point is these are the latest hot things, and these are the buzzwords that every conference company and everybody else is saying. We're at the cutting edge, the bleeding edge of digital, because digital is so good at being the cool kids on the block, and these are the latest cool kids. What happens to them is up for grabs, and there's lots of people with a lot of very vested interests in these things succeeding, because because they're going to make a butt ton of money, not you or I necessarily. And that's particularly true of NFTs. Okay, I may be hugely wrong. I think there's going to be a lot of people with a lot of very worthless NFTs in some time, but I could be really wrong, and they're making a ton of money. The point is you'll see that this digital engine, this hothouse that we work in, it spits out roles and cool new things, because we work in a technical, cool market, right? And everybody wants to be that. Recruiters and companies and brands, in many respects, want you to feel like you're going to get left behind, that ship has sailed, so that you get the FOMO and you join them, and they can pay you less money, make you work long, crazy hours, and you can be part of this cool party until they go bust and they let you go. Right, which we've seen 1,000 times with 1,000 startups for the past 20 years since the dot-com boom. I was part of that gig. I've played that game too. You know, our chocolate teapot is the coolest thing in the world. You know, um, so you're not being paranoid, because the world is wanting you to feel that way. But what I want to give to you is, don't. It's not real. Okay, it's almost like a kind of an industrial kind of FOMO. Um, if you're into that stuff, look, metaverse is undeniable. Okay, one way or another, that thing's going to pan out one way. I'd put my money behind that one, because mixed media, VR, AR, all of that stuff, fantastic. You just got to find the right application and usage for it, and the technology is still way behind. But there's very cool work. If you just called metaverse VR internet, or something like, or the Matrix, or jacked in, like as in Neuromancer. you can actually see that that's the way forward. But you're not missing out. This is the really important part. And I was actually somebody. I don't know if you got tagged, Debbie. Tech Circus tagged me in a post about Metaverse and Web 3.0 and some other stuff.
I think they know not to bother doing that with me.
But the point is I don't care if I'm researching Metaverse crypto, or Metaverse in particular. My methods remain the same. My principles, the way I do user research doesn't change. I don't have to become a Metaverse user researcher, right? Neither should you. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Don't let them sell you Metaverse specific training programs. I mean, I'm probably going to end up selling them because it's a way to make money from people, but it's just regular stuff rebranded, right? Because the technology isn't that wildly different. We've been doing VR research in caves and other such thing for 20 years now, at least. It's nothing new. I know I'm talking a lot. This is a great, and I could talk all day. But Debs, over to you. Sorry,
Yeah, thanks.
you just
Do
got
we
the
have?
lightning out. I'm sorry.
I'm like, I put up the lightning. We got more questions rolling in.
Sorry.
Jurgen says NFTs are basically tulip bulbs. Yeah. So I think the best answer for this is kind of what Dr. Nick said. If you're interested in these areas, go into them. I don't plan to go into them. If that leaves me behind from jobs or opportunities, I'm okay with that. I also didn't specialize in healthcare. I also haven't specialized in cybersecurity. There's so many new niches that have come up in the past 5 years, 10 years more that I didn't go into. I started specializing in e-commerce and retail in 1997. I started specializing in SaaS systems in the 2000s. And I do other work as well. I've done some banking work, but like I'm not going to pretend I'm fintech crypto. But I can still cover a lot of the world by being good at, well, A, UX in general, and B, e-commerce and retail and SaaS systems. So I think I would say, like Nick said, don't fall for it. These things exist and they probably will exist in one form or another and keep evolving. But I would say don't feel any pressure to work in them if they don't interest you. I'm not going to do it. But we have low ego action heroes who do work in that stuff, and it's working for them. So I support them. Yeah.
Just let me just say one thing. If you look at the recession of UX knowledge, right? If you look at all the UX UI shit that's going on, the non-user-centric UX that's happening, imagine. So we're now bringing the metaverse to a backwardsly trending UX market. And if you'd have brought the metaverse to the UX market in 2010, 2012, we'd have been in a much better place to embrace it and research it. Look what's going to happen. All we're going to have is the multiverse interaction design nightmares on whole new 4-dimensional, 3-dimensional levels. So yeah, just here we go.
Okay. Yeah. And I saw AR and VR in 2012, and I think we still haven't seen the promise of that. So anyway, this was from Mariwa, and I feel like Mariwa's picking up from something she asked weeks ago. Chihuat says, my friend was about to start a Coinbase and lost the job before he started. Now he's in limbo. Yeah, a lot of these places have been rescinding offers and laying off, and that's a sign as well. So Mariwa says, I would like to hear from you more about the onboarding experience. How can we evaluate it? What are the onboarding usability metrics and how we evaluate a good onboarding experience? Everything, smiley face. Oh, I definitely have an answer here, but Nick, do you want to go first?
I hope that they're one and the same. I mean, the
I'm
onboarding
happy
experience
when
is
we say
about.
different things.
Well, no, but this is. I wouldn't say it's obvious, but I'm going to give maybe the generic sitting on the fence kind of answer, which I think is the right answer, which is what is the user trying to achieve, but also what is the business trying to achieve, right? This is UX here. So your metrics are defined by those two things. Are you making them or not? Now, if the business needs sign-ups or make money or reduce costs or whatever that is, that's then you measure that. But you're also measuring, was the user able to find the red shoes? How many red shoes did they buy? And all of those other things, or what's the context of them buying those red shoes? All of that stuff. So, I mean, I think that's the role of the good UX person, is to work with the product person, with the web analyst, to define these and then go measure them, but measuring them through the lens of the web analyst and the user researcher.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I was actually going to take a different angle. So not one of disagreement, just a different angle, which was I find that a lot of people right now, especially some UX newbies, especially people who might have been through some boot camps, a lot of boot camps are really obsessed with the onboarding experience. That's sometimes most of what they make people design. Design people signing up and logging in and being shown a tutorial and starting. And my thought is like, that's an onboarding experience from 10 years ago. You know, we kind of don't do that anymore. And so I want to make sure to add to what Nick said, because I'm agreeing with him, is let's make sure that this is the least onboarding experience you can design. Take a look at it and keep asking yourself, how can I ask people for less information? How can I simplify this? And how can I not give them a tutorial because it's not in the moment help that's just in time. It's asking them to remember this information of something that'll come later. So boo tutorials. And how can we design a product that's so great that it doesn't need a tutorial because it's intuitive? So be careful. Don't try to measure an onboarding experience by, here's some of the mistakes I've seen people make. Let's measure the onboarding experience by showing people the onboarding experience and then asking them 2 minutes later what they remembered from it. What somebody remembers about something or what they don't remember about it doesn't mean it was a good experience. But I've seen people designing those sort of research or tests, so I want to just warn you there. So I agree with Nick that it has to come back to what task are people trying to accomplish. If you have a product, service, or system, oh, good evening, Yazir. If you have a product or service or system that does not require people to give information before they get started, F your onboarding. This is where critical thinking comes in. Say you have e-commerce. If you have e-commerce, there should be no onboarding. If you are helping people with carbon offsets, there should be no onboarding. I think my first question would be critical thinking hat on. I haven't put it on lately, but it is still here. Critical thinking hat on, everybody. Do we really need an onboarding experience, and how little of an onboarding experience can we make? So that would be my question to Mariwa and her team. Oh, very good. Oh, very British, in fact. Oh, very good. This is Three Penny Opera, I think.
I feel like I'm in
Willkommen,
Oliver Twist or something.
bienvenue, welcome.
Please, I can have some more.
Oh my God, it's the 19th century in here. So anyway, Mariwa, ask a follow-up question if you've got it. I hope this is making some sense, and I hope that we are somewhere around the right universe of what your question was shooting for. And Yilmaz, I will add your question to the bottom because we have other questions before yours, but thank you for sending it in. Let me copy paste that on the bottom, and let me get, is it appropriate to share a link to a video by Apple about onboarding? It's not that it's appropriate or inappropriate. It's that YouTube will actually block it on the assumption that it's porn spam. So you might have to format your URL strangely so that it doesn't look like a URL. There's a tip there. I spend day and night taking down porn spam off this channel. I don't know how YouTube hasn't figured that out. All right, so Mariwa, let us know what you think. Next, we've got Kath's question from over on LinkedIn. Oh, yeah.
Sorry, just on onboarding. Onboarding is such an oversimplification of what can be multiple different onboarding processes. From it could be just like you got to the website. Do you understand the proposition? Job done, right? 2, you need to learn something before you can actually use this thing, and all kinds of other things, legals, regulatories, and all of that. It feels like onboarding as a subject needs specializations according to pillar and all kinds of stuff, or different types of onboarding. And finally, I hate those onboarding routines where they mandatory show you, here's this, here's that, and you can't click away from it. You've got people have got different learning styles, and you need to handle both and learn from your audience, and that's how you develop that stuff.
And Mariwa has added, what about the trial account experience? No different. because whether this is a trial account, a paid account, a full account, a starter account, a half account, this thing has to be intuitive, and the onboarding should collect the least amount of information we can collect from someone to let them just start freaking using this. What is the least we can ask them for? Nick.
Don't let marketing directors bully you or force your hand. I think if I'm reading behind the lines, that's what I'm hearing. Because if the onboarding experience is how much information can I take from users before they hate it or bounce or bad things happen, that's not good. It's exactly as Debbie said. Lowest friction, ask or interrupt for exactly what you need and be sure that you need it.
Yeah, I feel like Nick's got it. I think the secret word here is probably a marketing department who's wondering how much information they can collect. And I think that you have to remember that that is business centric, that is not user centered. Your user wants to give you the least possible information and just use this thing. And remember, what I always tell people is if your system or software or app is that great, you don't need to overdo it. You don't need that tutorial. You don't need a hard sell. You don't need a countdown clock to join now or freaking else. So just remember, make the best product that matches real user needs, product market fit, and don't go for any of these tricks, and don't abuse people's trust and data, because you might get them to sign on for the trial, but then you're not going to have P1M1 conversion. Then marketing's going to come back and go, boo, we don't have enough conversion. Our trial people are not converting to paid, boo, wah, wah. And you can go, yeah, because we pissed people off. So there you go.
This is exactly why I don't do a lot more of the UX psychology stuff that everyone is clamoring for, because it will get used for exactly for this purposes. That's why I've been very careful about what I'm letting out. This isn't about turning it into marketing UX. Maybe that can become its own thing, but it's not a sort of thing that I want to be part of.
Yeah, and Chiwat says, everybody look for Apple's WWDC 2021 videos. The title is Discoverable Design, and it demonstrates what Debbie and Nick are saying. Thank you, Chiwat. Always a hero. I got my sunblock today, so thanks to you. So that's a longer story. Sorry, you're coming in late on that one, Nick. Chiwat's a hero, let's just say that. Okay, this question is super interesting, and it comes from Kath on LinkedIn. Thanks for joining us today, Kath. And Kath asks, do you think it's possible to go straight into a mid-weight role with 11 years physiotherapy experience and some personal projects? I totally realize the stakeholder communication and business needs would be important, not forgetting the creatives. Nick, I think we're going to have the same answer here, but I'll let you start and be nice to Kath. Kath is entering the UX profession. Let's be nice.
Yeah. I will be nice, and that's exactly what I was thinking was be nice, be nice, be nice.
Yeah.
Listen, this is nothing personal, Kath, okay? Because it's better that somebody like me tells you with love and caring and good intentions rather than somebody nastier or under pressure, right? This is really just me trying to be supportive as a friend giving you advice rather than anybody else or a recruiter or a hiring manager or that. Physiotherapy, yes, it's a science. Yes, you've got lots of good experience in that world, but it just won't translate as cleanly as you think it does into practitioner life, i.e. the skills that you've got as a physiotherapist. When you've got a head of studio, a head of design, head of UX, or whoever that is telling you to do stuff, you won't have the skills to do it as a midweight. And they'll expect you to be able to do certain things or make decisions or just, have a certain level of self-running that will be way beyond you. And that's when it'll get stressful. You'll receive criticism. It'll get hard going. And frankly, that happens a lot when we see, Debbie and I, everybody, see premature seniors or even leaders making bad decisions, doing really silly things because they're guessing effectively. They don't know. It's not coming from a world of experience. And that's when these conflicts arise. Save yourself all of that. If you go in as a junior, and as a junior, no one expects very much of you. Everybody knows you're in learning mode, so you can make some good mistakes, learn from them, be a low action hero,
low ego
absorb
action hero,
and learn. So that when you move up from a junior to a mid to a senior, you've got a level of confidence. You know what you're talking about. People aren't going to criticize you. and it's going to be a much easier, smoother ride, and you'll be a better practitioner doing better work. So I'm honestly, that's the best advice I can give you. I don't know if that's what you wanted to hear, but that's what will give you a more productive and a more successful, less stressful life.
Yeah, and the answer that I normally give here has a lot of what Nick says and then a couple of other dimensions. So one is that if you're going into your first UX job, you are a junior UXer. That's the bottom line. Whether you have personal maturity or work maturity because you've had jobs before, technically doesn't matter. You are a UX junior. You're not a mid-level UXer. You do not have the 2 to 4 years of experience in UX that a job is looking for. And I know some people are confused about this. They see a job that says 2 to 4 years experience and they go, well, I've been a physiotherapist for 11 years. And I go, yeah, but that job is looking for 2 to 4 years of work experience doing this, not just general work experience. I've been alive and I've held jobs. They're looking for experience in this because they're looking for that mid-weight person because they want someone who can hit the ground running. Now, that means that technically you don't want the mid-weight job. You might think you do because you want to blow through levels of seniority faster and get paid more faster or whatever your reason might be. And it's not that that's a bad reason. I feel ya. But the problem is if you go in above apprentice or junior level, the message is, I have reached a certain level of science, technique, skill, proficiency, and strategy. And they're going to expect that out of you. And if you get that job, there is a very small chance that you will be able to perform that job at that level. It is unlikely that you will be strategic about your UX work because you might still be new to UX work if you've only done personal projects. If you've only done personal projects and you didn't have a mentor or coach giving you advice and help every step of the way, chances are you guessed at those projects and you're still trying to figure out what to do. And so my concern about trying to jump over that is everybody's got to start at the front of the line. There are a couple of things where I see with people, but I tell you, if I've met people recently who are trying to get into UX research and they have a PhD in sociology, they're going to have some great translatable skills, but they're still a UX junior. And it's unfortunate. Nobody likes to hear it. It's disappointing. It means you're going to have to kiss some frogs for a couple of years until you can start working your way up. But the hardest thing to do in UX is get that first job. And I would rather see you get the job that matches your skill level so that you're going into an organization that's going to support you at that level and give you the continued coaching that you probably need versus trying to jump over that and say, no, I'm past that, but then you're not. And you're going to come into a company and I'm going to treat you like you have 4 years of experience and you know what the hell you're doing. And again, like Nick said, if you don't perform to that level, it could affect your mental health. At some companies, you might get fired or reassigned because you're not doing the work well. And so I think we understand the dream, but I think it's not going to be worth it. Assuming you're still here. Nick.
Yeah, I was one of those people. I had a PhD, and my PhD was in human-computer interaction. So was my master's and a psychology undergrad. But none of that mattered. I tried to get a job. I couldn't get work. I didn't have a portfolio. It's exactly as Deb said. In 2009, as a Dr. Nick, I had to start on a junior. I got a junior job. I moved out of London, moved my young one-child family at the time down to Bournemouth, where I started on £34,000 a year at an insurance company as a user experience executive. I remember I went for an interview with quite a fancy agency in central London just as I was coming to defend my thesis. And I remember getting absolutely crucified for the first time in my life. Before I went to do my PhD, I was always got the jobs. It was never a problem. I was just really good at what I did or whatever it was. But I got absolutely slammed. I got pulled apart. The role was like the project was, you've got to design a pizzeria ordering system or something like that. And I designed this super cool technologically based thing like you'd imagine like somebody who doesn't know what they're doing do, right? And it had nothing to do with user needs or anything around that whatsoever. So nothing. It was just exactly what designers do when they think they're doing UX, if you know what I mean. So sorry, I'm rambling.
Now
Point
let's read
is
what Kath's put up on the. Kath's put up something important on the screen that I want to talk about. Kath says, "That's pure gold. I asked with an open mind. In some worlds, junior means making coffee for people, so the insight is priceless." So let's just talk about that for a moment. Now, when I got into the music business right out of college, I was at the bottom of the ladder. And I wanted to be a sound engineer. And I was working in a very famous recording studio in New York City. And the first job you had to hold in the recording studio was intern. And the intern made the coffee and cleaned the bathrooms. And so, Kath, I get you. UX isn't that. There is no job in which you are making the coffee and cleaning the bathrooms. Now, that being said, the completely evil Jared Spool, who I'm often fighting with, has an article on Medium where he says that juniors should start out as production designers. And let me tell you, that is the UX equivalent of making the coffee and cleaning the bathroom. Because a production designer doesn't get to be a problem finder or a problem solver. They are a pair of hands assistant, and they have to do and make what other people say. So be careful. That's why we have episode 129 here on the YouTube channel. Come on over to YouTube, look up Delta CX 129. And you'll see Julia DeBari going through a whole bunch of great interview questions you can ask when you're getting your first interviews to learn what the environment is there and how UX is done, and if you're going to be doing real UX work or if you're doing the equivalent of making the coffee and cleaning the bathrooms. Because I have to tell you, I took a job once in 2012. And they said, "Oh my God, we need you. We need your expertise. Oh my God, we need you. Oh my God, oh my God." So I took the job and it paid pretty well. And I was like, "Great. What? Oh yes, we need you because you have banking experience and you have prototyping experience. Oh my God, we need you. Okay, what's the project?" So I said yes. And they said, "Well, Jen's made some wireframes for an iPad in portrait, and we need you to make the wireframes for the iPad in landscape." And there was nothing for me to problem find or problem solve. It was literally what we call production design, where they just needed a grunt working pair of hands who knew a little bit about mobile stuff to make what would the iPad look like if it was being held the wide way, because someone else already designed what it would look like held the tall way. So I don't believe that UX should start there. I don't think that is a good introduction to UX. I think you have to do the real work to get into it. I don't want to give you assistant bullshitty work. And Terrence will add your questions to the end.
quick. Let me just add something to that, Kath. You probably haven't seen this. This is if it focuses in, or does it? Can you see that? Here we go.
Yeah.
Right. This came from. I'm going the wrong way. Here we go. Over here. It's the lag. It's killing me. Sorry. Right. Here we go. Right. This came from traditional design studios decades and decades and decades ago, long before UX was a twinkle in anyone's eye. Right. Junior, as Debbie has said, then the midweight, the senior, the lead, the creative director, and then go the other way. It's this way, isn't it? The executive creative director, who is the king or queen of the studio, effectively, like the creative god. This totally translates, and this is what UX was based upon. And this is effectively a mentored progression ladder for the creative industry. And so getting on that ladder, it's so undervalued right now, because that's where the learning is in the progression through those stages. And at each stage, it's like a toll gate. When you go through from a midweight to a senior, you are expected to be able to work on your own, make good decisions, great in front of the client, stakeholder management. But beneath those levels, you're absolutely learning from those masters of that trade. And you can only get that by exposure to them. You can't read it in a book. You won't get it at a conference. This is why Debbie and I are so big on mentorship, because there aren't enough people like us in the world to give that level of mentorship, which is leading into the next question, which is why if you can get on that corporate studio progression, that's the finest working education that you can get.
Okay, I'm going to go to the next question. The next one isn't actually about the mentoring. Terrence, we've got your question. I have to put it on the end. You are question number 5 on the list, and I do try to handle people in order. So here is our next question. It says, "Hi Debbie, I work in enterprise UX. Our design team was asked to present how we research and design in our company meeting. Our goal is to get more visibility and buy-in for research, which is often a bit hard because customer managers are hesitant in contacting B2B clients or end users. What would you recommend adding to this presentation that would be most effective?"
Do you know why customer managers are hesitant in contacting B2B clients?
Yeah, I don't
That's
know. But yeah, that I see that one a lot. I think people are afraid of what researchers are going to ask them and afraid that it's going to bring up negative sentiments about the company or product. That's what I see most often, but I can't say that's this person's situation.
right. So I guess what your question is asking, how do I get the company more up with doing more research, right? How do I demonstrate the value of user research? If that is the question, to get more visibility and buy-in for research, yes. I've got a deck which I use all the time. It's called the value of user research, which is a way of converting organizations or cultures or departments, teams, into a more user-centric way, i.e., showing them the benefits and removing the threats. So Debbie has already said, I would imagine some of them are probably a little bit paranoid that either their product is going to get shown up or something, they're scared that, like, if there's no feedback, I can't be criticized, something along those lines. I if you can show some of the insight that you've raised and the value that it had to the organization, i.e., how it changed a service or a product, and what the impact of that was, that's, I think, the very finest way you can do it. What you're effectively doing is you're a salesperson at this point. You need people to understand what's in it for them, because that's what they're thinking. What's in it for you? So if you take away the scaries and give them lots of benefits, i.e., you'll be better at your job, you'll have a better review in 6 months' time or whatever, because you're doing this stuff, you're learning it, you're improving stuff, they'll be eating out of your hand. Also,
And
visualize and make it bloody simple, like in crayons, like no big words.
yeah, typically the angle that I go with, as people know from watching the show, is business intelligence and risk mitigation. That we are researching to keep ourselves from making costly mistakes, from wasting time by guessing at what we should build, or guessing at how it should look, or how it should work, or guessing what people need or what they think. And so I just remind people that the use of user research or UX research is all comes back to business intelligence, customer intelligence, and risk mitigation. I think this is one of those times when you have to speak the business's language. You can't come out and say, we need to do research to have empathy. Nobody cares. Empathy at the end of the day might not make us any money. You can't say we need to research to delight people. This all sounds very fluffy. The company wants to make money and save money, and you have to show them how good research sets us up to make money and save money, because we're going to catch our mistakes earlier. We're going to catch bad ideas earlier. And of course, that ties into what Agile and Lean claim to be. We claim Agile Manifesto Principle number 2 says we welcome changing requirements even late in the game. So we're supposed to be welcoming good knowledge and information when we get it. And it is risky and wasteful to let stuff go out to the public and then figure out if it's good or not, because what does that feedback loop even look like? Sometimes it takes months for that information to come back to us, and now we've been really risky putting something out there that users have to use, that competitors can see, that the stock buying public can see. So there's that. And then sometimes you have to, like Nick said, if you have a project that benefited from research before, you want to show that off as a case study. But I think if you have a project that was a bit of a disaster because it didn't have research, I think you can show that off as well and say, hey, remember that time we decided to just have a quick workshop and guess at what the user needed, and we spent 3 months building it, and we put it out there, and marketing spent all that money on SEO, and then customer support got all those calls and emails, and we lost some customers. hey, that's an example of how we kind of ran with something when we really didn't know, and we thought we were being agile and lean by just releasing it fast and learning later. But it's learn, build, test. Like it's learn first, not learn. Yes, learn later, but learn first, and that's just the way to go. So those are some things that I would recommend. And can you stay the usual 2 hours today, Nick?
Sure.
Okay, great. Thanks. All right. So let me put the next question up because the list is getting long. Someone else sent an anonymous question in 15 minutes ago, and I just got notified about it. I'm so sorry. Your question is on the list. Thank you for your patience. Chihuat says, once I was in UX, I never go back. I didn't accept jobs in advertising. Okay, he's talking about his transition. Okay, next question. When handing off designs to developers, is it enough to talk about how we wanted the user flow of the product and make sure they follow brand designs? Is it also necessary to talk about constraints? This is for interview questions regarding getting a junior UX role. I'm familiar with the person who asked this because I think I saw their portfolio, and I would still recommend. Your questions show that you don't understand the questions. Like Dr. Nick and I can't give you the what to say in an interview answer. The correct interview answer is to know the answer. Does that make sense, Nick? Do you see what I'm shooting at here? That we just can't tell people
Yeah.
we can't give you the cheat sheet for the test. Like we
Yeah.
can't say, here's what you should say during your interview to pass this question. If you are ready for a junior job, you should understand how to collaborate with a developer.
Well, that's the question that I was going to ask, and I'm not sure. I don't know. Is hand in the air kind of thing. I really don't know. But for a junior UX role, those don't seem appropriate questions. Because again, it shouldn't be between a junior and the developers and working out brand guidelines and should we be wireframing and
But remember,
is it a
people are asking
functional
for
spec
two
or what have you.
years. People are asking juniors to have 2 years of experience. It's not juniors from back in the day where it's a
Yeah.
true entry level job. Nowadays, the apprentices and the interns are the entry level job, if that. Some of those want a year of experience. And the juniors are 2 years of experience. And so you have to kind of get the word junior out of your head because they expect 2 years of experience. And so hypothetically, if you have 2 years of corporate work experience, you've worked with developers.
In that case, I'd say, for me, I think this is kind of a red flag for the organization. Even if it is a 2-year or mid-weight role, asking those sorts of questions, it highlights that they've got clearly some kind of cultural difference or procedural or whatever you call that issues between developers building stuff and designers designing stuff, and the link between the two is not very good. Maybe they don't have business analysts writing tickets. Maybe I don't know how it works. It works so many different ways in so many different places. But I would, rather than you being on the back foot, I would put them on the back foot with some much harder questions like, why are you asking me this as a junior role? Isn't this an established thing? Why do your developers do stuff like that? See how they respond. But obviously ask it in a much nicer way than I've said.
Yeah, it is. I think you're making a good point that I didn't notice at first, which is why are you asking a junior what the process? Are you asking them what the process should be? Are you asking them what they
Yeah,
usually do? Are you asking them to strategize the relationship between engineering and UX? You're right, Nick.
exactly.
This seems a little. This seems a little weird. And ultimately, when you're giving designs to developers, you have to give them all of your documentation. So they're going to get your user flows. They're going to get your wireframes or prototype. They're going to get the visual designs. But typically, that's not the first time you're talking to a developer. That's probably the answer they're fishing for. They're probably fishing for making sure that you're collaborating with developers along the way and that it's not just, well, I'm done with my designs, here they are. My guess
Yeah,
is
but there
they're
should be.
fishing for the collaboration.
Yeah, exactly that. Or, I mean, a junior or a mid or anybody joining in particular, unless you're a senior or a lead, that stuff should be either culturally present or procedurally present. There should be a way of doing that. And also, when
Right.
you're interviewing a junior or a mid, the questions that you're asking them are about the stuff that they're going to need to do. You're testing, testing the water to see will they handle it when I'm putting them in the fight. that's not relevant to the work they'll be doing. And if it is, then question the work they're doing.
Yeah, the variation of this question that I've sometimes gotten in interviews is something like, tell me how you normally work with developers, or tell me how you normally collaborate with engineering. And my answer is, well, number one, unless I'm being brought in as a change agent, I usually have to adapt to however you're doing it. So
Exactly.
thing one, I'm going to adapt to however you're doing it, unless you're asking me to review the process and make it better. But thing two, since you're asking, here's how I normally collaborate with developers. And a lot of times, again, the company is just checking that there is some sort of ongoing stream of communication between UX and engineering, and that we're not just the proverbial throwing our designs over the fence at them and walking away. So my guess is that they're checking for these things. And when you're asking about, let me put the question back up because I can see it and you can't. Isn't it also necessary to talk about constraints? If you are talking about constraints at the handoff, you are too late. You are supposed to be talking to engineers throughout your process to check for any technical limitations or constraints, and either solving those. Because when tech gives me constraints, I don't go, oh, okay. I go, well, can we do it anyway? Okay, let's do it. So you're supposed to be discussing constraints with them all the way, and I bet that is the right answer. But ultimately, if you're coming to the company with 2 years of experience, you should have stories of how I've done this. They can't just be hypotheticals of like, well, if I worked with engineering, I think I would do this. You supposedly have 2 years of experience, so you should be able to say, in my 2 years of experience, here's how I've worked with developers. Here's what I normally hand off to them. Here's how I collaborate with them. And here's how I discuss constraints with them. That's what having experience means, that you can say, here's what I've done in the past versus hypothetically, this is what I would do in the future. Starry stars. Nick, anything to add to that? Otherwise, I will put up the next
No,
question.
I think we smashed that one actually, and I wish you best
Hey.
of luck to the question asker.
Yes, me too. Continued good luck with your adventures.
And actually,
Oh,
let us know how that goes. I'd love to know how that turns out.
good point. All right. Next question says, let's put this up. Why do you think, oh, this is a different question. So, Anupam, your question will have to go to the end. We're on the next question. Why do you think there is more resistance to exploratory research compared to summative done by UX practitioners, and high confidence around what the problem is on the product stakeholder side? What is the role of non-user-centric UX UI designers in reinforcing this tension? I'm not sure I totally get this question. Nick, how do you take this question?
I'm just trying to interpret it. I think what you're saying is why do people hate paying lots of money for wild goose chases that deliver big thick reams of nothing, right? I think that's what this is driving at. And what is the role of non-user centric? No, okay. I think there is some hesitance to do exploratory or discovery type research because historically, market research, when applied to UX, doesn't turn out well. It doesn't give you actionable, and it can do, but it doesn't always, and it's a much higher risk. It doesn't give you actionable, measurable, bankable insight. What happened for the first 10 years of UX was that most agencies ripped off lots and lots of clients with lots and lots of really weak discovery, and nobody wanted to do it anymore. That was the first thing that got cut from project graphs before Agile was research. They'd cut we just saved 20 grand. Great, that's amazing. We've just saved another month and just brought the line to the left and all of that stuff. So there has been a kind of a stigma associated with it historically. Today, I don't believe there's too many competent researchers out there to be able to deliver this. There's lots of people who will deliver a lot of garbage and not many people deliver value. So I think we've got a lot of work to do before we get that area, to get the value up in that area. That said, there are some noticeable exceptions, like government places a high value on this sort of stuff and spends a lot of money and time and very good practitioners on it. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say on that.
Yeah, and here's Yilmaz saying product owners and management are usually more confident about what the problem is, and they don't think UXers are the right people to conduct research on what the problem is. And that mostly has to do with the land grab, where product managers and product owners are sure they can do our work as well as we can or better. And you also have to take remember the perspective that many companies have gotten rid of their R&D teams. Many companies used to have research and development. They had a dedicated group of scientific people, very often PhD people, who were just researching and figuring out the directions that the company should go in. But then people read cool books about startups going fast, and they said, ooh, research and development, that's old, that's slow. We want to be like these fast startups. Let's get rid of those old, slow people, and let's just go fast. And just guess, if a product manager has an idea of what the problem is, let's just run with that. Let's just experiment. And so we put a lot of shiny gold around experimentation and A/B tests and MVPs, but it's all really glorified guessing. And the problem is, if the product manager has guessed correctly once or twice, they now have the confidence that, like, hey, see, I really do understand user problems. But if they're not guessing correctly every time, then they are creating risk and waste. And so the problem is that many product managers don't respect what UX does, especially what UX researchers do. If I find I'm in that type of company and I cannot change that and I cannot fix that, I'm usually leaving. And typically I'm saying to people like, hey, I'm the UX researcher here. Somehow I had to go through 4 interviews and a design challenge in order to qualify to do research here. How many UX research interviews did you go through? Oh, 0. None. You don't qualify to do UX research. Now, of course, you have to find a gentler, nicer way to say that, but it's true. There are people trying to do user research who no one has ever checked if they can do any aspect of user research or UX research, which is why I always put this graphic up, because I find product managers think, and you're welcome to show them this video, if we just go ask people some questions, that's UX research. And I say, no, that's probably market or marketing research. UX research looks like this. You have to start with your goals and writing up a plan. Now that throws them off usually right away. Oh, wait, I didn't write up a research plan. I just want to ask them some questions. Yeah, it still takes a plan. What is your plan? What's your research goals? What methodologies are you using? How many people are you going to recruit? Where are you going to get them? And then what's your script going to be? Or what's your discussion guide or protocol going to be? Now, how are you going to recruit and find those people? How are you going to execute these sessions? How are you going to analyze them? And I find most product managers are stumped when I show them this, because they say, we just thought you guys grab a couple of people and you ask them some questions. That's all I want to do. I just want to grab some people and ask them some questions. And I'll say, okay, but that's not the right method for doing this. And if you ask the wrong questions or the wrong people, that's risk and waste. We could be going down the wrong roads. So these are some of the things that I'm saying to these people, but I know that there's a lot of false confidence out there where people think that, oh yeah, UX research is just, asking people some questions. Anybody can ask people questions. I can open my mouth and say questions. And I say, people get PhDs in this shit. It's a lot more complicated than you think.
Look, depending upon how serious or how important the quality of that insight is. Now, it doesn't have to be like putting a man on the moon or finding a cure for cancer. I mean, if it's putting an extra 0 or making it to the plan or whatever the business is targeted at, that's also equally important. And once you take that into that weighting into then you want an appropriate user researcher to get you the appropriate insight so that it gets you that KPI, if you know what I mean. People, that penny hasn't dropped in our world. People don't value user researchers because they think we're market research folks with a notepad asking questions on a street corner or what have you, which could not be further from the truth. So we all have to work really, really hard. People like Debbie, myself, Darren, lots of kind of friends of the show are all out there trying to put out the fact that we are so much more than these kind of questionnaires. Do you know what I'm saying? We
Yeah,
are
yeah.
people who learn things about the audience, which translates into money with confidence. You know, that's a really powerful thing to do, and that's why you UXers or user researchers should be like quantitative researchers used to be 10 years ago, or actuaries, really well paid, important members of the team. That's where we're going, I hope. It's taking a lot longer than we thought.
But and we also have to say no to a lot of things. I know right now UX people and UX leaders are saying yes to a lot of crazy bullshit, thinking, well, then maybe they'll like me or maybe I'll get invited to the meeting. And I say, stop saying yes to shitty things. We're never going to establish what we do or our value or our specialty if it's yes to everything. Hey, I'd like to run an observational study. No, just run a short survey. Okay. No. No. So we need to grow a pair, as we say in America. We need to have some of these, and we need to say no to things so that we can establish that we are true specialists and not just an order-taking assistant. So I'm going to
And
move
that's what
on
I
to...
call check. Debbie and I both have called it kind of checkbox research, you know, when it's like, yeah, but I spoke to 10 people, you know, it's like there's no consideration of objective, of plan. It's just, I did the activity and the output is meaningless, questionable, low validity, garbage, unreliable.
True.
But they don't care because I did the work. Look, and here's my
Yeah.
PowerPoint.
Yeah. UX got done. Check the box. This was a follow-up question to something we were saying much earlier. Thanks to Jürgen for patience. And it says, regarding bullying by the marketing department, how can a UXer in an agile team stand their ground when there's a CMO on the other side?
You have to work with them, okay? Because you ain't going to win. So there's that. Let's just say that from the outset. Do not go one-on-one with a CMO. I don't care how moronic they are or how competent they are or anything in between. If that's a losing fight, I wouldn't do that. However, but you definitely have to do some stakeholder whispering type thing. You know, you really do. More so with a CMO than any other role in the building. And that's just my experience, my journey. CMOs come from just a completely different world, if you ask me, right? I think that I would rudely call them dinosaurs, but there's some very modern CMOs who aren't dinosaurs. So that's probably a really horrible thing to say. The point is they're trying to achieve things which are often really, really in the opposite direction to what you're trying to achieve. And you have to find a way of kind of converging those streams, right? Because you are on the same side. It is the same brand. You're all working for the same team, but you do have different objectives. You're trying to make the user's life as easy, as low friction, as quick as possible. And they're trying to do their stuff for whatever reason. I'm not judging it. It's just that's marketing, right? If we liked it, we would be marketers, but we're not. So try to work with them, help them achieve those goals. So I'll give you a very rapid example. If you've seen me talk at conference, I get this one out a lot. National Lottery, they wanted me to make sure that people gave a telephone number, a mobile phone number for a mandatory sign up. And obviously, as you know, mobile phones are very protective things, and getting SMS is ridiculous. It's like asking somebody their inside leg measurement or weight or age or something. It's too intrusive. I can show you another time. I put together a really nice thing that basically triggered the herd and got a bit of FOMO going. To basically, I think it was 80% sign up, which was completely insane and unheard of. Use your psychology, use your herding, use some of these UX principles, should we say, or UX psychology principles, to work with the CMO to try to do what they're trying to achieve. If it comes to the push comes to shove, and they're about to ask you something that is fatal, you have to do it. But you say, I recommend against it. These are my reasons why. But they outrank you. It's their gig. If it goes wrong, you've got that as a bum covering exercise. It's horrible to have to do that, but this is the world.
Yeah, so that means documenting it. So I see what Nick is saying. I think I mostly agree. And the thing that I would add is typically with the CMO, they're under a lot of pressure to make certain numbers go up, and sometimes they're the wrong numbers. So sometimes we have to question the metrics. We have to say, is that really the right thing to measure? Like, is that really a leading metric towards how we judge success? Or is that just a vanity metric? You know, time on page. Nobody wants to spend more time on a page. That seems like that's outdated for us. We should take another look at these metrics. So sometimes I'm trying to find ways to tell people if the metrics seem like the metric is maybe the CMO is an okay person, but they're under pressure to lift a shitty metric. So sometimes we have to say, hey, let's work together on telling the executives we're measuring the wrong thing. So if they happen to agree with you, that's great. You can push for that. Another thing with the CMO is I always try to remind them, like, whatever they're under pressure to show, chances are it will be helped in the CMO's sleep if we have a better product. If we have a better product is easier to sell, a better product might even sell itself, a better product will have more word of mouth, a better product will have higher NPS scores, a better product will have happier tweets. John says 100% Nick nailed this one. I make it very clear my recommendation is different and then I do it anyway. Move on. No reason to continue stressing. Yeah, my usual policy is I will recommend something 3 times, and if they don't go for it after the third, I document it and just do what they say. But I do push a few times if I feel I can. So I would say take a look at just reminding them that a better product, that product market fit, better product market fit, where we're understanding people's needs and we're meeting or exceeding them, is the best marketing, because then people want to use the thing. Our marketing costs should be going down. Our cost of acquisition, which is a typical marketing metric, cost of acquisition should be going down. Utilization of customer support should be going down. NPS, if you're measuring it, should be going up. So I try to just tell the CMOs, I'm doing a talk. We rescheduled this from tomorrow to today because I'm talking at a marketing group. So I'll be talking about some of these types of things and how the usual things. We have so many questions. I want to keep going, but thank you for that one. And we had Terrence's follow-up question from earlier that we postponed. So Terrence, thank you for your patience. John says, a couple of months ago, it was poetic when a director asked why our metrics got worse. Then the timeline showed it started when their recommendation got released. I just smiled. Yeah, that's when you have to find the gentle way of, I told you so. The gentle way is probably, let's look back at my risk documentation. Nick?
That's a really good point, and hasn't come up for a while. When many places are using Google Analytics and they're doing it in a less professional, like maybe they don't have a dedicated web analyst or a very junior one, and they're not annotating the graph to show when a release happened, when a change happened. And that's so critically important to do what John is saying, because you can then attribute change to metrics, if you know what I mean. If you haven't got that annotation, that line that says on the 1st of May, version 2.0 with the new sign up came out, you've got no idea of interpreting what happened afterwards. So in this case, clearly somebody's done it well. It says, and you can actually see the difference, the delta between that implementation and effect. So yeah, that's a huge thing. Make sure people annotate your change so that you can take the benefits from that, i.e. you can then take that story away, it can go into your portfolio, and it becomes a win, a story that you can exemplify at interviews and all that kind of stuff.
Cool, thank you. So our next question is one that we get nearly every week, and it is, what would be the best approach to finding an established and credible UX mentor? How can I avoid being misguided and misinformed as a new UX designer transitioning into the field? Nick, you want to jump on this with some of our usual answers, and then I'll bat clean up, as we say in baseball?
Sure, I'll be actually brief because I don't want to. I'll let Debbie handle this mostly, because there isn't a really good way. That's the problem in our world. There aren't enough really great seniors or really great UXers in the world to share the knowledge. A lot of the leaders who should be very senior UXers are not. And so there's a lot of that going on. And those mentors who are high quality, like Debbie and anybody else, they're just swamped and don't have the time, so it's it's a scarce resource. How can I avoid being misguided and misinformed? If you stick with names and references that Debbie or people in Debbie's network give you, I'd say that's go a long way to giving you reliable sources of information, because everything else is an absolute nightmare. Like YouTube, Medium, LinkedIn, they're hives of just misinformation. You don't want to learn from them. Take Debbie, Delta CX as a leading guiding light, North Star.
Thank you. Very sweet. Nick is not paid for these things, everybody. Hashtag not sponsored. So the main thing that I want to say about mentors, coaches, things like that, is that you just go to their LinkedIn and you take a look at what their work history is. How long have they been doing UX work? Now you take a look for their specializations. Are they more of a designer, more of a researcher? Have they done both? How long have they been doing these things? There are a lot of people out there right now who are saying they are UX mentors. They're even on ADP lists and other things. And in some cases, they've been working in UX a year, two. Now, they're obviously a year or two ahead of your career if you're still breaking in. So you can ask them, any advice for finding my first job? But they're unlikely to be the right people to coach you on the craft of UX. They're unlikely to be someone who can tell you, here's some techniques to learn, here's some things to do. They might tell you how they got their first job, but so I think you have to ask yourself, what kind of mentor am I looking for? Do I just want some career advice from someone who's a year or two ahead of me? Okay, those people are easy to find and they can tell you how they did it, and maybe their story translates to you and maybe it doesn't. Or are you looking for someone who will look at your work and give you work feedback? I don't just mean your portfolio. I mean, let's say you're working on a real or fake or personal project. Someone who's going to look at this every step of the way and say, ooh, you didn't apply this concept correctly. Ooh, out in the real world, we usually do this. That person probably has 5 or more years of experience, maybe even 7. So I think you should just take a good look at their LinkedIn and their background. Make sure that they have experience and don't fall for generic vague words like creative director. Very often that's an artist and isn't UX at all. UI UX. Very often that's an artist and isn't UX at all. So you have to be a little bit of a UX person about your own researching there and say, critical thinking, what have these people really done? Shri says, awesome talk at 24 Hours of UX, and you're going to come to my workshop. Great. Thank you so much. Quick shout out for my own workshop. If anybody would like to sign up, I'm holding 2 workshops in July, and they start at $27 American. So I've made it really inexpensive, and it's 9 hours of live workshop with me. Though I do hope you'll pay the higher price, but if you can't, please pay the lower price and join us. It's at deltacx.link/TTCC-training, and it's my Transforming Toward Customer Centricity program. It is designed more for people who are already working in UX, since it's about how to start trying to make change. If you have never had a UX job before, I have to admit that my program is probably a little bit weird because you haven't been in the work yet. All right, so hopefully that helps. Moving on. Oh, so yeah, mentors. And then ask the people you trust. Go out there, find people you trust, and ask them if they mentor. As for me, I can't make a lot of free time to mentor, as Nick pointed out. I do coaching, but I do charge for it. And to me, the only difference between mentoring and coaching, at least, though I know some people have other definitions, mine is that they're pretty much the same, except mentoring you expect for free and coaching you pay for. So, there you go.
That's a good distinction.
Yeah, some people disagree with me, but that's okay. And so let's go to the next question, and Prince will add your question to the bottom. Next question is, when is a survey needed in research apart from screening users in an interview? Nick, when do we need a survey?
Great question. Shit, I'm just knocking things down behind me. Sorry. When is a survey needed? Okay, so surveys are needed, and the work that I do, I consider them a necessary evil. I don't like them, but there are absolutely times when a survey is absolutely the thing to do. Let's say you're doing a kind of discovery piece, and it's quite a wide angle, kind of high level thing. Let's just say you're doing it for a UK supermarket or something like that, right? So it's a general population. It's a general UK population. You might start I certainly definitely wouldn't lead with a survey. Okay, in this case, I'd start my pockets of cascading 5 samples. Start to get an idea of what's going on. Try different personas, different geographies, different social strata, whatever. But then, once you start to get some hypotheses together, a survey can be a very useful tool or method for going at scale, for testing your hypothesis in a much, much larger sample. At that point, you're not doing discovery per se, if you know what I mean. You're kind of validating or trying to validate hypotheses, or investigating hypotheses is a better way of looking at it. So yes, nutshell answer is that surveys are often needed in research. I try to use them as least as possible, but when you do use them, just make sure you use them appropriately. Some people reach for a survey as their first research tool thing, if you know what I mean, and it's usually my last. I'm a behaviorist. I like what people do is much more truthful, honest, better, etc. But there are times when you need to get factual stuff out of people, and again, a survey is really good for, do you use the red plug or the green plug when you're changing a wheel on a 747? Asking a whole bunch of engineers, blah, blah, blah. As a small rider to that, I have a much greater preference for things like polls. So a low effort, very rapid, ultra kind of micro question thing. Really great on intranets and a few other bits and pieces where you can put a promo pod and ask your quick question. Do you use the red button or the green button? Boom, done. Low effort, anonymous, higher response rate, and less opportunity to construct. There you go.
Cool. Okay, now we've got 45 minutes left and 6 more questions. So I'm probably going to close questions for now because I know that we are long answer people and I'm worried that we are going to run out of time. So let's say no more questions for now. We're going to go with the ones that we have, and I've added Shree's new question to the bottom of the list. As for surveys, I rarely use them, and I think they're mostly for when do we want to know how many people said something. I think the worst way to use a survey is, would you like a feature that does this? Any survey that tries to ask people to predict their future or tell you if they would like a feature or idea, those are the surveys to avoid. Sometimes people are running a survey to try to learn more about how possible behaviors or groups break up. Like when you do this, how do you do it? And then we could go, we have these buckets of people. We have 33% said this, 70% said this. Well, it's 103. But anyway, you know what I'm talking about. Like we need to figure out, do people fit into certain buckets? But I have to say, I run very, very few surveys in my life because, like Nick, I'm more about the qualitative side. What are people doing? What's their decision-making process? Why are they doing things? How are they doing things? And not how many people gave us an answer. Almost every survey I see seems flawed. Nick, we have a follow-up question from Anupam, and this question is extremely strange, and I think we're going to answer it similarly. How should I answer when companies ask, this is of course in a job interview, how should I answer when companies ask how you collaborate? What tips, processes, and methods should I mention?
Yeah, the red flag just went up. I know. I just picked up on it. Yeah, let's all do research. Yeah, let's have a research party. You're not collaborating, therefore you're not a team player. You're not teaching me user research. Is that where we're going?
No, I think this is, I'm a junior in a job interview and they're asking me how I collaborate. How should I answer the job interview question?
Oh. Yes, I see what you mean. This is crib sheet stuff. Yes. And I can't answer that for you, man. I just can't, because I don't know how you collaborate. And how I collaborate changes as a function of the gig that I'm at, of the people, the teams I'm working on. Debbie will tell you, if you're collaborating with a developer, that's very different to a designer or a business architect or a web analyst or a product manager or a CMO. So they've all got different interaction points and different interfaces, should we say?
Yeah, I think that these are questions that we should pretty much refuse to answer, because it doesn't make sense for us to try to feed you what you should say in a job interview, because then if they hire you, they're going to expect you to do that. And you might not have even understood what you said because you just parroted it from our show. And so Ultimately, if someone is asking you how you collaborate, the answer is how you collaborate. Whatever that answer is, I can't tell you what to say. You have to be honest. I don't want you to lie. I don't want you to try to drop buzzwords in there. You should be honest. I mean, that's one of the main things we promote here on this channel. We promote critical thinking and we promote honesty. It doesn't make sense for me to say, oh yeah, if you want to do well in that interview, tell them X, Q, Y, Z. You know, that doesn't make sense, because then if someone says, great, now we're going to put you in some of these design challenges I see, they put you in a scenario with potential coworkers and they say, now let's see you do that. And you're going to be like, oh, I bullshitted my way through that interview and you are toast. So ultimately, anybody who's getting interview questions about how do you do a thing, Nick and I cannot give you the answer for that, because the answer is, how do you do that? And if you are claiming to have a year of experience, 2 years of experience, 3 years of experience, then you're supposed to have an answer on about any question that says how you work. I'm not going to tell you what to answer when they say, what is your process? I'm not going to tell you what to answer when they say, how do you collaborate? You have to just tell them how you collaborate. And if you don't have the experience that you're pretending to have, then you have to think about being more honest. I don't think Nick has anything to add, which I thought there was going to be something coming there. Okay, great. We're not going to tell you how to do this. That's not ethical. All right, next question. Hi, Debbie and Dr. Nick. For moderated usability tests on a new website prototype design built from the ground up, do you have any tips on how to analyze the qualitative data and observations from users? I need help on where to start.
Good, I like it. From moderated usability test. All right, so you're testing a new website that prototype from the ground up. You've got a brand new thing, and you want to work out, is it any good, or what have I got here? Right, that's what's going on, I think. Okay, I'm gonna make the assumption that you haven't actually embarked on this work yet. Please tell me that you haven't. But if you have, okay, we can handle that too. Okay, this is where, again, Debbie kind of alluded to, or I think she said it earlier, this is where one of the big differences between market research and user research is we're going to create a kind of a research plan, okay? Because you've got this thing, we need to work out how are we going to look at it, how are we going to learn from it, right? So it's a brand new website. Is it a brand new product or service, or is it just a new website of this product? You know what I mean? It's the proposition brand new, like here's a flying car, or have you already been making flying cars? This is a new website to kind of version 2 the flying car. Do you know what I mean? There's two levels that you'll always hear me talking about a mechanical level and a cognitive level. Those are my terms, not industry terms. So the mechanical is the can you do stuff. It's the finding buttons, navigating around, can you find and buy and do. The cognitive stuff is, did you like, did you prefer? And it doesn't matter when you're going through this experience, there's always going to be those two levels that you're looking at. So if it's a new website, that some of this stuff is, do they understand the proposition, the brand, who you are, what's being on offer? You know, they still get that. Have you changed the brand colors or everything else that goes on in a reskin, if it is a reskin? But then it's about, well, can you still buy the red shoes that you could do beforehand? Is the IA comparable? And again, there's so much going on in my head right now because I can't be sure if this is a brand new proposition or an existing one. But I think just by going through my kind of train of thought, hopefully this is of use to you. You can hear the issues in there. So effectively, you're creating a script to understand, to get to understand your research objective, which is, how is my new website performing, perhaps? I'm not sure, but you would want to make that nice and succinct. What is it you're trying to learn, and then a method for doing that. You're going to get people to go through it. Just asking them to flick through and give them an opinion in a moderated test is no good, because they'll probably start telling you things about colors, which is interesting, but not as interesting about needs and journeys and all of that kind of stuff. So effectively, you're going to find out, how would you get to this website? Have you ever been here before? And then once you're here, what do you sort of do? And then how can you do it? there's so much in your question that it's hard to give you a clean answer because my brain is going everywhere. There's so many different variants of this answer, if you know what I mean. So I can see Debbie laughing. I'll stop talking because I think I'm probably kind of rambling a bit. I'm hoping that's kind of some value there. It was just really rambly. Sorry.
Yeah, so good start. What I would add to that would be typically I just give people tasks. So hopefully you build the website because you understand the tasks of the people coming to the website. You understand, let's say it's a public facing website where you're showing off what your company does and you're hoping to get leads or customers. You should have done the right generative research to understand what people's tasks are and what some of their, what information they tend to look for on your website. What information they find compelling, what does your funnel look like? So what I would be doing when I'm testing a website prototype, and again, I don't know if this is the public facing website that promotes your company or if it's the actual product like a SaaS system or a portal, but I would just give people tasks. I would just say, and again, I have to recruit the right people. I have to recruit people who are target customers of this type of thing. Let's say it's project management software. I'm just making this up. And let's say this is the public facing website that would sell them the project management software, and you want to make sure the website's compelling and it gets people interested and they sign up for a demo or they do the free trial or whatever. So I would just make sure to recruit people who are shopping for or have shopped for project management software. And then I would just give them the tasks. Give them, say, you're shopping for project management software and you end up on this website. How do you decide if you trust this company? Let people, how do you determine if this company could be a match to your needs? Give them one thing. Don't give them a double-barreled question like, how do you decide if this is right for your needs and do you trust them? So be careful with your questions. But I try to give people tasks that emulate what they would be doing wherever that is. So if it's the public-facing website, it's what information do you need? Hey, you're evaluating this company as a potential project management system. Here you are in the homepage. Go. That's it.
It's
And then
much
you just
easier when
watch
you've got
them. Go ahead.
yeah. For e-commerce transactional type websites, much easier to do very clear task-based work. You can still do task-based work on informational stuff, but it gets a little bit fuzzier because it's less concrete and there's a lot more interpretation going on, if you know what I mean. This is probably the mother of all it depends questions. It really is, and that's not going to help you. But everything Debbie said, everything that I've said, it's all spot on. You've got those tasks, the scripting effectively, what you're asking them to do should cover a couple of different bases, if you know what I mean. Some of the cognitive stuff around, do you like it? How did you find it? What's the value? How might you discover this? Or how did you discover it? And then the more practical, mechanical stuff of what can you do it? Does it work for you? Does it, or was it broadly comparable to the last time you did it, or is it industry standard compared to other sites? Because this is part of a range of sites that you're evaluating, should we say. It's too many it depends. So if you want to know more, let us know more and I can be more specific to the actual task at hand.
Well, I'm going to move to the next question because we have half an hour and 4 more questions. So our next question looks like this. During generative research, how do you ask questions that enable you to dig down to the root cause of something? Do you just keep asking why? How do you ask dialogue-provoking questions?
In a nutshell, yes. Right? They call it the 6 whys, I think it is, in management consulting speak. Have you heard of that?
I think it's 5
Debbie?
whys.
Yeah, 5 whys. 6 whys is like 5 hats, or God, all of that stuff. The point is the 6 whys, because each why, I think you even said the word backwards, but effectively it's taking you backwards. Why, until you get to root stuff. The only flip side to that is people start to construct. They start inventing, whether they like it or not. They do. Sometimes if it's really factual stuff you're after, that's okay. That's good. It's easier. But when you're after that more cognitive stuff, the less mechanical, it gets much fluffier, much riskier. Need larger samples to kind of weigh this stuff, to hold this stuff down. Yeah. That's my answer.
Yeah, I have a different take on this because I'm always worried about a question about asking someone, say I'm in a moderated research study with them, generative or otherwise, I'm always worried about saying to someone, unless it's really gentle and in the right moment, why did you do that? Or why did you do it that way? Because it can accidentally sound judgmental or disapproving. And so I'm usually not directly asking the person, why did you do that? Or why did you do that way? It can make them feel a little bit scrutinized, even though we are scrutinizing them, but like it can remove some of that neutrality, and then they feel like, oh my god, why did I do that? So I think when we are looking for root causes, sometimes we can't ask our subject why'd you do that. We have to find other ways to phrase different questions or build something into our study that will help us see what the answer is. And sometimes that answer is around mental models and perceptions. It's the way people see a certain thing. So how will you get to the bottom of that? Sometimes it has to do with their decision making. Why are they going to pick you over them, or why are they choosing anything? Sometimes it has to do with collaborators, like especially in the decision making process. Like, oh, I don't get to make that decision. So when we're talking about a root cause, I don't know if you have an example, because I'm having a little bit of trouble trying to picture what this might be, whether this is generative or evaluative research, and it's the root cause of what? The root cause of their behavior, the root cause of an action they took, the root cause of why our prototype stunk. So I'm having a little bit of trouble figuring out like an example of what this might be.
Sometimes it's like it might, once you've gone back even 2 or 3 whys, it's because you get into corporate myths and legends, because that's the way I was told it was done, or this sort of stuff, you know. And actually that's really useful, because you realize quite quickly there's no good reason for this. It's just we're doing it because everybody does it
It's
that way,
how
and that's
we
the way we do it.
always do it.
Yes, exactly that. Exactly that. One thing I would add, though, and this is going to sound quite funny coming from me, but trust me, my bedside manner is usually a lot better. Um, when I'm asking why questions, I'm always doing it in a knowingly, knowing that what Debbie has said about the threat and the putting people on a back foot and bias and skew is always a thing. So it's always, when you're asking why, your tone is always a kind of a supportive friend, right? Always. And so when you're asking why, it's like it's in the tone of your voice. And I know the control of the tone of my voice is particularly bad, but I've developed a persona, should we say, for my user research head, that I do have a good bedside manner, and I am controlling my tone and slowing things down and not being too challenging. So I think it is okay, but just get some practice in, get lots of practice in. And if that means standing in the mirror, literally, and asking why a different way, so that you can hear the timbre or those other soundy words that Debbie knows, that make you sound just calmer and nicer, so that you can ask what might be perceived a difficult question that isn't perceived a difficult question.
Yeah, my user research voice sounds a little bit more like this.
Hi. Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, at the end of every user research session, I often feel like I've put on a show, because it's a version of me, but it's a little bit more acting than I would prefer to do. I don't like to act. I only like to be me. So yeah, there you go. All right. So yeah. How do you ask dialogue provoking questions? For me, it's just asking them more about their task, their decision making, who's involved, that task stuff, baby. Watch it in the micro lessons playlist. We had a question here. I think it was Shri saying, can you give a brief about TriTrack Agile? I'm working in Agile and with developers is weird and challenging. As a UX researcher, how would TriTrack improve that? Oh, I've got an answer for that. Nick,
Yeah.
do you want to talk about
So
TriTrack Agile?
working with developers is only weird because you're probably not working tri-track or dual track, right? Things can get weird, because the bottom line is that whether it's dual or tri-track, it doesn't matter. The principle is that UX and design are working in advance, in a time period or a time box period in advance of the development team, i.e. there's time in between what we do and what they build. And that's the principle here. Okay, so whether it's dual or tri, it doesn't matter. The point is that one train is ahead of the other train, and that time is what makes it less weird. Okay, that means it buys you and your product team or your compadres in the product team to do your good user-centric work. Prototype something, test it, validate it, make it happy, fix it, do whatever you want in a non-development world, and then write the ticket, get it built, do it through the product manager, etc. Like I said, I've worked 1 gig truly dual track, and it's the kind of the best gig and the worst gig, but that's cultural. From a dual track, it was fantastic. It's a very, very good way of working, and if you ask me, it's the only effective way of UX working. It's mental that people don't do it. It should be industry standard globally because it's the way. There is no other way that works as well as it does. It's just the bottom line.
Yeah, so let me quickly do the short version of dual track and tri track. So basically, dual track agile says, hey, there's 2 streams of work going on at the same time. There's everything UX is doing, and there's everything engineering is doing. And from time to time, these are going to collaborate and communicate, and UX is going to have something ready to give to developers, whether they're going by sprints or some other timing. But hey, there's 2 streams of work happening at the same time, and these people might not be working on the same thing. UX is usually ahead of engineers, and so they are not working. UX is working on something now that engineers will work on weeks from now. Tri-track Agile, and these are all Googleable, I didn't invent them. Tri-track Agile takes that a step further and says there's 3 streams of work happening at the same time. The first one is UX research. This covers anything we're looking to do in research, especially early generative exploratory discovery stuff. And from there, we get our strategies, our pain points, our insights and opportunities. That track feeds the second track, which is usually called discovery, which I don't like, but basically the second track is now road mapping, design, information architecture, testing and improvement. But notice that we're not road mapping first. We're road mapping after we get information from research. And so it really pushes that task-oriented design approach, which again is also Googleable. I didn't invent task-oriented design. You can Google that. And the idea is that instead of being a feature factory where we have an idea of let's build a thing, okay, UX build the thing we already decided we're making, we are research informed. We have our pain points, our insights, our opportunities. We prioritize those, and then we solve them. And the solution tells us what the features are. We don't pre-decide the features or the solution. We come up with the right solution, and those are the features, and those might change as the solution changes. So Tri-track Agile is better, especially for researchers, because it calls research out on a separate track. This helps highlight the specialty of research. This helps highlight how important it is to have a separate researcher from a designer. Some people say, you just need one UX person who can kind of do all this research and design stuff. Okay, but can they do 2 streams of work at the same time? No, of course not. And so it's not going to be as agile if we are waiting for one person to do everything and hoping they don't have COVID and hoping they didn't go to the Spanish islands. And so the tri-track helps to remind us we need these separate people. Now, of course, I take that even further and I say, look, if a team of 6 engineers working on for 8 weeks on something is normal, I want 5 UX people working on stuff for 8 weeks. I want 3 researchers and 2 architects or designers working together. Now we're going to be agile. Now we're going to be efficient. Now we're going to move much faster, and we won't have to skimp on stuff and cut corners because we staffed up appropriately. Part of the problem in teams and agility is we're seeing bottlenecks with UX, but instead of solving that bottleneck by hiring more qualified people, we say, let's just do less UX work. Then we'll just get it done faster because there's less of it. Or let's have other people guess at UX work, then it'll just get done. And all of these are bad ideas. So I hope that helps that question. That's the short version. We have 3 more questions and 20 minutes. Good luck us. I know. the long-winded musketeers, but in a good way. People like us. They keep coming back. Okay, since we've been talking about relationships with marketing, someone said a different situation with marketing. What if no one on the project team knows the appropriate marketing person? Seems there isn't any communication or relationship, makes finding out about the target audience or competitive analyses, and I'm sure there's a word there missing that would say difficult. Nick, what do we do if we don't know who's our marketing partner?
I can give you the naughty version, because I've done this once, I think maybe once, is you kind of troll them. And I mean this in a nice, positive way. So again, don't attribute this to me. The highest paid person's marketing opinion, should we say, the biggest hippo, will make themselves known if the right document is out there. That's probably not the best way of doing it. Okay.
Ask.
My other question would be to you is yes, okay, it's important to have a relationship with the marketing department. But, and again, this sounds to me like your organization is a particularly large one, like a blue chip or some kind of enterprise level entity, because if you can't find the appropriate marketing person, it just implies it's a vast distributed function. I've never really got much of value from marketing, if I'm brutally honest. And again, that's just my experience. When I get pen portraits from them and stuff, they're kind of interesting, but it's really, really hard to get much out of them that applies to a persona or that could be used of value. I don't know how to say, how do you find the right marketing person? I would keep going upwards. But again, I want to know why.
Ask. It's really easy. If you can't find the right marketing person, start asking, hey, is there any marketing person that's assigned to this division, domain, product area, product manager, product owner, engineering team? Hey, is there anybody in marketing who's tracking the things that our project is related to? But I think that while a relationship with marketing is important, if sometimes just for show, the important relationship that I think we tend to really forget about is customer support. There is such an amazing wealth of knowledge from customer support people, because not only do they talk to customers way more than we do, and sure, they're documenting that through their own lens, so you have to take it a bit with a grain of salt, but they're usually documenting what browser they were on, what computer they were on, what version this was, what aspect of the software system people had a question or problem about. They can give you an unbelievable dump of information on what's on customers' minds right now. And I think we're not incorporating that. We're so busy saying, let's run another survey to take people's temperature about shit. And I'm going, let's just go to customer support and see what's on fire.
You want onboarding KPIs? Whoever asked that earlier, that's a big one. Is the call center metrics huge?
Oh yeah, we did it today.
I'm doing it right now.
So I'm doing it right now, not as my work. I did it right now today because I got myself a new phone, which means I had to set up all my apps again. And my banking app wouldn't let me log in. It said, your other phone is the primary phone. Would you like to make this the primary phone? And I was like, okay. And then they were like, what's the code? And I'm like, what is my code? I don't know. I put in every password I knew. I put in every number I had. None of them were right. Finally, Pier Mario got into a live chat with them because my Italian's not good enough. And they said, oh, you have to go into your web-based online banking, go into your settings, and you have to go into your settings that under a section that says mobile. And then you have to find the spot on the page that says deactivate my app so that you can activate a new phone with the app. And my boyfriend said to the guy something like, wow, we were never going to know that. We were never going to find that. And the guy basically said back, I tell people this all day. And to me, that's an amazing piece of information to get from your customer support team next time your product manager is saying, what should our priorities be for next quarter? Well, sure, we can do generative research and learn that, and we should do generative research, but holy cats, go to customer support and find out how much their time is wasted by self-service that the customer should be able to do.
One of the things that I am notorious for doing is turning up at a call center with a box of chocolates with a box of chocolates, because call center people love sugar. You'll on the end of every aisle, at least in the UK here, you'll see mountains of sugar, right? Free donuts and just sugar. They love it because it keeps them focused, sharp, and it keeps you going through the day.
Yum,
Turn up with some
yum.
quality streets and something, and get friendly, make friends with the various team leads, because the team leads are the greatest people. They're wonderful people, and they're kind of almost like mini umbrellas over there. They are mini umbrellas over their teams, and they'll tell you straight off the bat the top 3 pain points all the time at any time. I'm working with the call center at this gig that I've been at for the past year. It's a government thing. Before I arrived, they introduced a new service and they didn't do any user-centric work. And guess what? The call center exploded. Literally, I mean, not literally, but it went crazy. Do you right? I mean, it was a proper UX parable. Don't do this. Don't change everything and then wonder why 30,000 people are calling your call center. And that's exactly what happened. And so this time round, everybody's been once bitten, twice shy. And so that's why I'm working extra hard to keep customer service super happy. As far as I'm concerned, she's my stakeholder. No one else. If I make sure that she's happy, everything is going to rock. It's going to run smoothly. And after we went from from private beta to public beta, she had minimal calls, minimal. Everybody's happy. That's the testament of good UX, in my humble opinion, is when things are quiet and just ticking over nicely.
And that's also a great metric. I think metrics related to the call center having less of the same old stupid questions, like this poor guy who all day tells people, go to your account, go to mobile, deactivate your app, activate the app in the new phone, boom, you're done. So yeah, when I worked at Macy's some years ago, every month we got a dump from the call center. And I remember one time things kept popping up like, can't pay my bill from the app, because like Macy's has their own branded credit card. Can't pay my bill from the app. Can't pay my bill from the app. Can't. Finally, I went around the UX department and I was like, who owns this? And okay, yeah, I own that. Okay, so what's up with people not being able? What's up with these complaints? And they said, oh, we never finished building that feature. You can't pay your bill from the app. So all kinds of people had assumed, because they saw it in other companies' apps, they could pay their Target card. I don't know if it was Target, but they could pay whoever card from the app, that they just expected Macy's to do it too, and they couldn't. And they were calling up and complaining because I think the alternative was you had to like show up to a Macy's store and pay for your credit card bill, or you had to send your online banking a check or whatever. And I was like, can we prioritize this? We're getting all these stupid calls all day because our app doesn't do something that people expect it to do. You learn so much.
That's so the nail on the head, because as we all know, there are usually 2 different versions of the code. There's the mobile version, which came later to the native web code, and they've never been they're separate code branches, right? So the product manager is usually pulling his hair or their hair out, trying to manage these 2 things. The users have been conditioned because I could do it on the web, but I can't do it on the app, or vice versa, right? And that's why this all comes about. What we need to be able to do is to inform the product manager that function X is desperately needed in the other app because it's causing Y amounts of volume. Put it right at the top as an ultra critical, or whatever that is, right? That's our role, is to identify and serve our product overlords nicely.
Oh, very nice. Okay, we've got 2 more questions, and then we're going to play ourselves out of here. So Debbie and Dr. Nick, any tools that you recommend to start with research repositories, also your views about repositories and maintaining them?
Okay, I'll be really quite brief. I don't use a repository, or the ones I have used, like Aha and a couple of the others, have been a bit rubbish, to be fair. They're just glorified word processors with some other stuff in it. But they make a lot of the apps in UX world are made by non-UX people for juniors who don't know the difference, so that they can feel like they're using a UX tool, but they're not actually doing UX. So one of the ones people who I respect use and enthuse a lot about is Dovetail. And I see it in my near future at this particular gig, and I think Dovetail's the thing to put on your radar, and it's probably going to become a thing. I've used Confluence, obviously, and unfortunately, which has good and bad about it. But I'm not the best repository person. I store all my insight in a deck of personas, and that's how it works for me. But that isn't brilliantly scalable, or doesn't work for enterprise. There's lots of ways that doesn't work, which Dovetail will do. My views about repositories and tips to maintain them. I have seen this 1,000 times. Somebody buys a tool, that person leaves, the tool dies, repository dies, all of that stuff. It becomes like a person's pet or an ownership, right? Make sure you socialize this stuff, make sure it becomes cultural, make sure you use it. Otherwise, obvious things that a repository is only as good as the last person who updated it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and to add to that, I'm kind of in the same boat with Nick. There's a lot of things I do like Dovetail about, and of course, not sponsored. But I'm not using Dovetail as a repository. I'm using it for other things. In general, I've been using a lot of repositories mostly because I'm usually a hired gun somewhere. I'm usually a contracted worker, and I'm in and I'm out, so I'm not responsible for creating a repository or adding to it. Where I'm consulting right now, they're using Enjoy HQ, and I'm not enjoying it. So I think if I needed a repository, I would look at Dovetail first, since I like other features that it has. Some people told me when you want to go big on repositories, you want Aurelius. But I have to admit, I have not checked out Aurelius, so I don't have an opinion on it either way. I'm not against using one thing as a great repository and Dovetail for the other things it does well.
I would suggest Airtable. I think Airtable doesn't get enough good rep. Have a look at Airtable. I use it a lot. When I've got a specific need to. Airtable is basically like a database meets Excel. I know that doesn't sound very sexy, but for storing, let's say, recruitment participants in, and for logging and managing all of that, it's fantastic. For storing insight, it's fantastic. It might have some scalability issues. I don't know if it's going to work for the insight that you need to store, but have a look at Airtable, Airtable, not sponsored, but just a cool tool. And if you don't use it for that, you'll find some way to work it into your life. It's a cool kind of structured notepad, but that's really underplaying it.
Yeah, that's how I feel about Monday.com. It's like now that I've played with Monday.com, I just want to use it for everything, and I wish I had more reasons to use it. So, Michelle says, plus 1,000 for Airtable. I manage my existence there. Yeah, that's like me and Monday.com. Okay, our last question is from Janice, and I'm going to pick on her a little bit because we answered this one earlier today. Janice asks, do you have a target number of users you aim for usability tests?
Yeah, I like to ask 2 people, usually family or friends, because it's quicker and easier, and they tell me what I want to hear. Yay! Okay, I'll be super brief because I know we're getting towards the end of time. A target numbers. I have a target. My target isn't the number of users. The target is how confident I feel in the insight that I've learned, right? So if I'm going to ask 2 people, my mum and dad, and I ask them something like, what color of pen do you use? I'm pretty sure that that's not going to be representative of the sample of the wider people that I'm going to be designing or making products or services for. That's the bottom line. There isn't a clear number. Don't let the Norman Nielsen 5 people thing throw you out. Let's not go over that again. Debbie can quote you in a moment. We've discussed this lots of times, and she's probably even got an entire video dedicated to sample numbering. But from my perspective, as you learn things, there's a curve, right? And that curve, after a number of people, starts to plateau. It isn't necessarily 5 people, but it will plateau after. When that plateau happens and you're not learning anything new, that's how many people you need to do.
Yeah, and
or you're doing it at risk.
For usability testing, I do tend to go by the NNG number as a guideline, not as a hard and fast rule. So typically to me, you're testing until you see the patterns and have the themes. That's often 5, 6 people, could be 8, could be 4. But like we did some usability tests a couple of years ago, and we had 6 B2B customers and 6 B2C customers. That was unmoderated. A while back, I did a moderated card sort. That wasn't a usability test. It's moderated card sort, and we did 12 for that. So yeah, I think that while there are some rules of thumb, you just use them as general guidelines, and ultimately you want to talk to people until you see the patterns. Usually when you start to hear the same things over and over and there aren't too many new insights coming out, you've reached the right number. So again, I'm usually doing unmoderated usability with 5 to 10, and moderated, depending upon what it is, 5 to 12. But again, you're supposed to be using, if you go by the rule of thumb, it's 5 per persona, per segment. If you have 6 personas and you go by the rule of thumb, that's 6 times 5, that's 30. Or another thing that you're hearing about more and more of is, great, you found 5 people to do your usability study. Do any of them have mobility issues? Do any of them have vision issues? Do any of them have accessibility needs? So very often we're recruiting people without accessibility needs, and we are not seeing the usability side of accessibility. So I think that the idea is not skimp on it and not just find 5 people and go, it's fine. But I think you can do, depending upon what it is, maybe 5, 10, 15, but then go to Fable, not sponsored, or some of these other panel services that will help you get people with disabilities. And you can then say, okay, we want to talk to 10, 12 people who match these customer profiles or target profiles. And we want to talk to some people with vision issues, with motion issues, with hearing issues, people who have arthritis, who don't use a mouse and tab through everything. So I think that while we have these rules of thumb and they hold up, we're not using them the way the guidelines were designed, which is not just 5 people and run. It's 5 per group, plus don't forget people with disabilities.
And if you're able to work in a dual track or any kind of an agile way, it's a really good thing to do or to aim towards, is to have just research as standard every sprint. You're just recruiting all the time. You've got 5 people, 10 people in every sprint, whatever that is. And whatever is you've got at hand to test, you've got people there. That's the best way of that's the holy, or no, that's the promised land, should we say? And I've been there a few times. It's not like some weird utopia, is having research as standard, business as usual research. That's the way forward. So it isn't like we've got to get it all in one go and let's just get it now and make sure we get 12 people and then done, walk away. That's high stress stuff.
And also it's in cycles, because if you're changing your design, you're testing again. So we're going to have to wrap up. But before I ask Nick for his parting words and how we can stay connected with him, just a reminder that there is no show tomorrow. That's why we did tomorrow's show today, with thanks to Dr. Nick for changing up the schedule. Wednesday, I'm going to be reading an article I have about how, if you are going to take a UX boot camp, some advice I have on selecting one. The 16th, we're going to have friend of the show, Hong, on to show some of the cool things he's been posting to LinkedIn about UX careers and interviews. Friday, of course, is the critical thinking stream. Monday, we're back to Think Out Loud. So last week we started a project on the Florida Bar Exam website, and we'll continue that on Monday the 20th. Tuesday the 21st is Office Hours Ask Me Anything with special guest Seth Mbele, who I'm very excited to have on. Wednesday the 22nd, we're doing a podcast learning about service design. The 23rd, I'll be reading my article about UX research without a hypothesis. So I've really packed in a lot of shows in the next week because I felt bad that I was on vacation. So if anybody missed out on the shows, I'm going to pack them back in. And so, Nick, tell us a little bit about how we can find and connect with you before we see you again in a month.
Cool. You mentioned the B word, boot camps. As I mentioned on LinkedIn, I've been working away at putting together a boot camp. A boot camp that Debbie and I and Darren and everybody else would be happy with, because there is a demand for boot camps. People are doing them. And I realized a few weeks ago that we might as well provide a boot camp, which will never replace mentorship, coaching, and all the good stuff that we've talked about today. But if people want to buy something, then you might as well get a better start than the stuff that you've been getting.
Can I get
That's
a
what I'm working
preview?
on. Yeah, I'm really bust hauling. I've got a major gig I'm delivering at the same time. But yes, as soon as I absolutely will.
Okay, thanks.
So what I would say to all, this is the first I've told anybody about it, apart from what I put on LinkedIn a few months ago. For anybody listening today, If you want to mail me, I would say not mail Debbie because I just don't want to burden her with it. Just drop me a note on LinkedIn saying I'm interested. Drop me a PM saying I'm interested. I'll make sure I'll be at the top of the list. The reason why I put that MailChimp thing up today was because I was trying to set up a mailing list for people to sign up to, and the UX of that whole thing is an absolute shocker. I actually went to a competitor because the IA was easier and I could find what I wanted to find. It's so obvious and it's so dumb. Anyway, where can you find me? You find me on LinkedIn. And keep an eye out for this bootcamp thing. I will be putting a mailing list up in the next few days, but because I expect that thing to get swamped pretty quickly, because you guys are friends, I'm going to give you guys kind of privileged access. So just let me know who you are and I'll put you on the list. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nick. Thanks for prioritizing our low ego action heroes. So I'm going to play us out of here. Thanks again for everybody watching. Office Hours Ask Me Anything is usually every Tuesday at Italy time, 6:30 p.m. So we hope to see you next week. And other than that, be well. Nick, thanks as always for everything, and good luck with the boot camp. I hope you'll tell me more about it behind the scenes. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Cheers, all. Bye-bye.
Customer centricity as business intelligence. Visit deltacx.com to learn why we are